What's up, party people? It's your old pal F here, and my goodness, thank you for tuning in. Um, we're here to talk about South Park today, or more specifically, the South Park movie Bigger, Longer, and Uncut, which I was an animator on. What can I tell you? But before we get to that, and by the way, it was an experience. I'm not going to say what kind of experience just yet, but working on the South Park movie was one of those pivotal periods in my animation career. So I really think you're going to enjoy this story. So thank you for tuning in. The response, by the way, to the How I Saved Rick and Morty video that I put up was fantastic. Thank you to everyone who tuned into that. I hope I can make this one as interesting as possible. So, I mean, the story itself is interesting. Um, I just hope I tell it well. Here's the thing I want to get off my chest right out of the gate. These f bomb videos where I am, and I am gonna keep making more of these. The response I've gotten has been overwhelmingly positive, so I'm gonna keep making more. But here's the thing, and when I do, I'll either be talking about what I'm working on presently, or I'll tell a tale from my long and bizarre animation career. Hang on, I need some coffee really badly. I just got up from a nap. It's what it's like to be old. Anyway, I'm probably going to focus very largely on my my 25 years in the animation industry, because I did a lot of jumping around. I wore a lot of different hats. And did a lot of different stuff. So I'm hoping to tell some stories that might be of value to you guys out there. So I am going to make more of these, but please understand, going into this right out of the gate, the production values of these videos specifically are going to be about nil. It's literally just going to be me plopping down, opening up QuickTime, and hitting record. You're going to hear me stumble. You're going to hear me drink my coffee. You're probably going to hear noise outside. There's not going to be any graphics. The closest thing to anything seeming like a special effect or anything like that is me holding this F-bomb at the beginning of the video. And by the way, coordinating that was harder than you think. This is actually a dog toy that we got in the mail, and it's really quite cool. Too bad I won't let my dogs play with it. Anyway, point is, I don't want to put a bunch of blood, sweat, and tears into these videos for a couple of reasons. Number one, this channel that you're on right now, we're making cartoons. We're making actual cartoons for free. They're original, and we're making them for you guys. So I want to put all of my actual mojo, my actual energy into helping making those cartoons, and hopefully by now, and if you haven't, please stick around after this video and check out the teaser trailer for our very first original cartoon that we're going to premiere on this channel. It's called Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip. And Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip is actually a whole story in and of itself, because this is the very last cartoon that I pitched to Nickelodeon that they said no to. And by the way, that was after they approached me. They came to me and said, "What do you got?" I go, "I got these guys, Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip." And they're like, "Uh-huh, what else do you got?" But anyway, story for another time. Point is, I'm putting a lot of my energy into that. Why? Because I feel like there's a need. I've gone into it in detail in other videos, so, please look through the selection here, and I go into greater detail about what it is we're doing at Fountain's Pen Productions. But, in short, I basically came across, through Twitter, I came across a whole bunch of super talented people who wanted stuff to work on, and so we pooled our resources and decided, hey, let's make some cartoons. And so that's what's up. And so I'm really trying to put all of my actual, professional energy into that. And we've got in the works, we've got 3 pilots, a mini series, and a whole bunch of like super short quickies that I think are going to be a blast. So anyway, please, even if you can't stand me, hit subscribe, do it for them, because I've got almost 200 people that I'm working with to create just a bevy of different cartoons, and it's all going to be free. It's all going to be on the up and up. And we're really just kind of a small, humble, grassroots organization. We're all of us just kind of doing it for fun. We're doing it in our spare time, and we're all just doing it because we love cartoons, and we feel that there's something we can add to this whole independent animation thing. So we've been around for a year. We're probably going to be premiering Flotchy, Notchy, and Tip sometime either over the summer or near summer's end or the beginning of fall. But following that, we will be premiering new cartoons semi-frequently. So, point is, I'm putting a ton of my creative energy into that. And then the other part of it is, I don't want to put a lot into these videos because I feel as though, certainly at this stage, in this channel's existence on the internet, part of our charm is that we're not slick. And I'm not really working that hard to make us slick. I want the cartoons to be good, and I want the cartoons to exude that the people who worked on them really put their all into them. But we're not going out of our way to, be slick. We're a very humble little operation, and we're just kind of we're doing the best we can with what we have. So, I feel as though, me just kind of making these videos is, this is as good as this needs to be. This is sitting down in front of your crazy old Uncle F, hearing a story from his animation career that may or may not be true. So, given that, I don't feel the need to festoon the video with graphics or sound effects or or facts or anything like that. So, just understand that when you watch these F-bomb videos, this is just a little chat between you and your old pal F. So it's not going to be crazy slick or anything like that. But then we're not trying to be crazy slick at Fountain's Pen Cartoons. We're trying to do something a little more grassroots. So cheers to that. So let's talk about South Park, shall we? It's kind of impossible to talk about my time on South Park without talking about what led me to work on South Park, because it was around 1997. I had... Oh, and I should preface all of this by saying I'm an old man. I'm 53 years old. The story that you're about to hear is as I remember it, and I am telling you right here and now. I'm not making any promises that my memory is necessarily 100% accurate. The dates are probably going to be wrong. I have a terrible brain for all that stuff. I'm not going to remember names of people that I should remember. So again, please don't, don't expect that. So yeah, I can't really tell the story of South Park without telling about what came before it. And what came before it was Klasky Csupo. I had only been in Los Angeles for about a year after having sold everything I owned, packed up my car, and moved from Michigan, my home state, out to California, a state that I had never been to before in my life, which is a whole other story in and of itself, and that'll be another F-bomb for another time. But the point is, I was still very, very new in the industry. Had absolutely no chops, no mojo, and through a series of very fortunate and very, sort of the universe's smiling on you sort of events, I had landed a job doing storyboards at Klasky Csupo on their new show, The Wild Thornberrys. So that's another thing of mine. If you're interested in me, you can check out, the whole first season of Wild Thornberrys I did storyboards for. So you can look those up if you're so inclined. Anyway, so I landed a job doing storyboards for the Wild Thornberrys, and right out of the gate, even though I was super, super grateful for the fact that this was my big break, I had never worked on such a big production before. And I was really, I enjoyed that aspect of it. The fact that I was working on a cartoon that was going to be on Nickelodeon, and this was by the studio that did Rugrats, that was nothing shy of amazing to me. So I was really grateful for the opportunity, but I remember after I got hired, the only thing I'd known about Klasky Csupo was the existence of Rugrats, and I had seen Rugrats, but I didn't sit around and watch it. But I thought it was cool looking. I liked the quirky designs and all that stuff. Um, and I think I'd seen Santa Bagito and Ah Real Monsters, and I'd seen the first season of Duckman, and I'm like, oh, this is a studio that does Duckman. Oh, how I would love to work on Duckman. So I'm like, okay, this is the same studio that does those shows. I'm super excited. And by the way, I needed a job, so I was super excited to be working. Period. Um, and again, this was my big break. I had been doing really rinky-dink stuff prior to that. But then I got on the Wild Thornberrys, and after, when I moved to Los Angeles, one of my goals was, number one, get a job. That had been accomplished. But number two, I had aspired, even back then, to sell my own shows. Because I'm one of those people who I have more ideas than I know what to do with. Which is one of the reasons I started this channel in the first place. I have more ideas than I know what to do with, so I'm like, I need to go out and pitch these ideas, and I had already had a couple of pitching experiences that had gone well enough for me to nobody had said, oh, we're going to pick up your show, but I had actually sold a short for to MTV for the cartoon sushi anthology show. It's called The Raven. You can look it up. And I sold that, and I had also had a lot of people that I pitched shows to already say to me, like, oh, wow, this isn't what we're looking for, but you seem like a really creative guy, so please, keep bringing us stuff. So, it was my intention, right out of the gate to create and sell my own ideas. So, and in addition to that, when I moved to Los Angeles, hoping to break into the animation industry, I thought I was going to be a character designer because that's really all that I thought I was capable of. I had seen storyboarding and I had seen animating and stuff like that, and I just thought that just looks way too hard. But I'm good at coming up with characters, so I should just be a character designer. I had seen model sheets, and I'm like, that's the kind of thing I can pull off. But they didn't need character designers. They were like, we don't need any character designers. We need storyboard artists. Can you do storyboards? And like I said, I needed a job. So my reply to that was, yes, I can. Which of course was a lie. But the good news is working on the Wild Thornberrys was like storyboarding boot camp, because, every other episode is a zebra stampede or a rhino chase. And I was surrounded by people who would go on to be some of my best friends ever. And they were all super duper incredibly talented. And I'm not going to start naming names because I'll have a brain fart and I'll forget half of them. And then I'll also not mention someone that I should mention, and so just better not even go down that road. Point is, I was surrounded by really talented people. And so I very closely observed what they did, and I learned to storyboard pretty quickly. Out of a necessity. I needed the job. I needed to survive. I was out in California on my own, and I didn't know a single person in Los Angeles, so I was really, really alone. But after about, I want to say, 6 months to a year of being on the Wild Thornberrys, and this too is a whole other story that I'll do another video about one day, it had become clear that the director I was working for and kind of stuck with just absolutely hated my guts. And I was, and look, I rubbed some people the wrong way. I'm the first person to admit that. But the thing is, I tried really, really, really hard to sort of bridge whatever gap existed between me and this person, and they were just having none of it. So, in that respect, I was very, very miserable on the Wild Thornberrys after my first 6 months. And the thing is, I had a couple other directors who were like, give John to me. I'll work with him. I like John. For whatever reason, it just wasn't happening. So, in that respect, I was not having a good time. I loved the people I worked with. The studio, in general, treated me as good as Klasky Csupo sort of does. But the people were all incredibly nice, and I had amazing experiences while I was working there, but I was miserable because my director hated me. And then on top of that, I was pitching shows around very aggressively to places like, Disney, Warner Brothers, and Cartoon Network because I wanted to work on very cartoony cartoons. And what I discovered about the Wild Thornberrys really quickly was it was not a cartoony cartoon. Despite the fact that it had, really wonky character designs and really expressive, sort of art direction and all that stuff, there's no squatch and stretch, there's no gags. It is, and they took themselves very seriously. Like this was a show that was set in reality, and we had to abide by those rules. And that's where my limitations as a draftsman really started to come out. My perspective was terrible. I was really good at character acting, and I was really good at posing, and those are the only reasons I think that I was able to keep my job at all, was because I was good at those two things. So, but after about, like I said, 6 months to a year of doing it, and like I said, not being treated all that well by my director, working on the type of show that was not the type of cartoon that I wanted to work on. In addition to that, when I would go around to different studios to pitch my stuff, specifically Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network, they would say to me, "Oh, we can't even really talk to you." Especially, I should preface this: Nickelodeon specifically would say to me, "We can't talk to you because you're working for Klasky Csupo, and we have sort of an agreement that we won't poach their talent." So I was like, "You gotta be kidding me!" And meanwhile, this is the time at Nickelodeon where they're doing Angry Beavers and Rocko's Modern Life and shows that I would have murdered to be on. And I remember I even took an Angry Beavers test, and I took a test for Cat Dog. I was like, anything to get onto a cartoony cartoon, because I felt that's where I could really shine. But they were like, "Oh no, your storyboard tests are okay, but we can't take you because you work at Klasky Csupo, and we can't poach from them." And then even when I would try to apply to other cartoons to get work, the only storyboarding samples I had were of the Wild Thornberrys. And they're like, "Well, we don't do this style. We do more Looney Tunes style." I'm just like, "Oh, please, come on." So I just now realize that I'm probably sitting too far away from my screen. So if the volume on this has been terrible, and if the sound on this has been terrible, you have my apologies. Just jack it up as far as you can. Like I said, anti-slick. So anyway, I was stuck. I was stuck. I would show my work around to other studios, and it wouldn't matter how many different types of drawing styles I could demonstrate in my portfolio. I had the stink of Klasky Csupo on me. And so I'm like, I gotta get out of here. I'm like, but the one thing I will say about Klasky Csupo, and I don't think I'm the only one who will step up and point out this fact. The main method they used for keeping people working there, because they paid okay, but they were non-union, and they expected you to work really long hours with no overtime. And shows like Rugrats, which they had crazy rules, like Rugrats, every single character had to be in every single shot all the time. So you're drawing 6 characters at a minimum all the time, which for storyboarding, that's just insane. And then you've got Thornberrys, which, like I said, it's constant crowd shots and giraffe stampedes and just all this stuff. It was a lot of work for okay money, and you were expected to work overtime. And by the way, on Thornberry specifically, you were expected to like do research on how your animals moved, and in the episode you were on. And this was before the internet was a place where you could go and just type in what do giraffes look like when they run. You couldn't do that. You had to like really research. Oh, and by the way, did I mention this is before digital everything? So these are storyboards, pencil on paper. So the point is, I wanted to get out of there so that I could start working on the type of cartoons that I thought I was destined for. And but like I said, I wasn't having any luck, because everywhere I'd go, they'd be like, "Oh, you're working on the Wild Thornberrys. Okay, it's that very European, style. We don't do that here. So one day, one of the producers of the Wild Thornberrys, I don't know if that was her title or not, but her name is Ramsey Nato, and she is a big shot now. I am 100% certain she would not answer my calls, even though she and I always got along great. But she's big. She went on to work on South Park. Um, and she had gone on. She left Klasky Csupo to go to South Park, I believe, because she had an increased role. She was working on the South Park movie. The South Park movie, it had already gotten out desperately needed people because they were making South Park bigger, longer, and uncut simultaneously while still continuing to do the show. This is where it gets really interesting if you're a South Park fan, because the way the South Park TV series is created, and for anyone who knows anything about the show, that they turn it around in a ridiculous amount of time. Well, this is when the seeds of that production system were really being planted. So the TV people were already like overworked. And so to make this movie, they had taken their best people from the TV show and put them in high positions on the show, but they still had to make the show while simultaneously making the movie. Now, South Park, as a property at the time, it was really big, but it had just hit that first stride. Like, it was a phenomenon. Everyone was talking about it. It was a big deal, so it was a perfect time to make a movie. So anyway, Ramsey Nato goes over to South Park. She gives my roommate at Klasky Csupo a call. I happen to be the one answering the phone. And she wanted to see if he wanted to come work on the South Park movie. And he wasn't around at the time, and I'm like, Ramsey, I'm, sorry, so-and-so isn't here. And she was like, oh, well, do you want to come work on the South Park movie? And the first thing I told her was, well, in what capacity? And she's like, we need animators. We need animators really badly. And I was like, I'm really not an animator. What are you guys doing? And she's like, yeah, we animate in Maya, which at the time was sort of the go-to 3D, computer software for making 3D anything. And that's how both the show and the movie were created at the time, using Maya. Everything was made to look like virtual cutouts, and they were a lot more committed back then to making sure it looked like a cutout. And I said to her, I'm like, I don't know Maya. I'm not really an animator. But I feel like I was pretty upfront with her. I was like, I would love to get out of Klasky Csupo, but I don't think I'm your guy, and I will certainly pass this message along to my roommate. And she's like, no, we will train you. We'll train you. We'll teach you how to use Maya. You'll learn on a job. I promise it'll be great. And she didn't say, I promise it'll be great. But she assured me that my lack of experience in these things was not going to matter. And I sort of hemmed and hawed, and I was like, well, can I maybe go on to do storyboards? And she's like, look, if something opens up, we'll talk about it. She's like, but we're pretty staffed up for Bordeaux, so we need bodies in here animating. And so I did. This was one of those watershed moments in my career where I had to really, really weigh the options, and it was not an easy decision. And by the way, I was a fan of South Park at the time. Like, I still think the show is brilliant. I was a huge fan of South Park, but I didn't see myself as being that kind of animator. I'd never done anything like it, and didn't aspire to do that kind of show in my career. But I thought to myself, well, this would get me away from Klasky Csupo. So I had to really, really, really weigh my options, and the pro list and the con list just kept adding stuff to it. On the one hand, I'd get away from Klasky Csupo. On the other hand, I would lose all my connections at Nickelodeon. Because at least if I'm working on the Wild Thornberrys, I can say I'm working on a show that's for Nickelodeon. I'd be working by the way, working on the other side of town. I'd be going in not knowing anybody there. except for Ramsey, who, again, she was going to be my boss's 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 boss. So it's not like, she and I were going to hang out together. So, um, there was just a lot to consider. And going over to South Park in my head was this enormous, enormous risk. And again, I thought to myself, every second that I'm not on the Wild Thornberries is a second that I'm not, um, you know, doing storyboards and getting better at storyboards. And I'm like, oh, what am I gonna do? So after a lot of thought, I finally came to the conclusion. I'm like, they're gonna teach me to use Maya, and what is that worth? That's worth quite a bit just out of the gate. This is going to be like a paid educational experience. I will at least be able to speak the language of CGI. And in addition to that, I'll be able to say that I worked on a feature film. Those were the two criteria that sort of tilted the scales in favor of leaving Klasky Csupo to go work on South Park. So it was with a very heavy heart that I said goodbye to Klasky Csupo. Like I said, even though my director hated me and the studio itself, it wasn't all joyful to work for them. They were the place that gave me my big break. And I had bonded like tremendously with most of the people that I worked with there. They are still among some of my best friends walking the planet. Were the people that I, cut my teeth with at Klasky Csupo. But again, even those were still sort of budding friendships. So I was like, oh gosh, if I leave here, and again, I'm living in Los Angeles where I don't know a single soul. So I'm like, if I leave here, am I still gonna have my friends from Klasky Csupo? And I'm quite certain there were people who said to me that, oh, this is not a good move. And by the way, the person I shared my office with at Klasky Csupo, the guy she had actually called for, I said to him, I'm like, hey, if you're interested in working on South Park, they're hiring. And he was like, no, I don't want any part of that. So not out of protest, but because he had the same conclusions that I had. It was a long drive to get to the South Park studios, and again, you're not storyboarding, you're not doing the part of animation that you had sort of been hired to do. So, but I was in a slightly better position to sort of roll those dice. So, like I said goodbye to Klasky Csupo. My director, I'm quite certain, was happy to see me leave. And I showed up at South Park, and one of the first things they gave me was this snow globe, which I think is pretty cool. Right out of the gate, the fact that they even just gave us comedy. One of the fact that they gave us something this sort of iconic and cool right out of the gate really impressed me. They gave me this folder. This is what they handed to me. Obviously, I'm skipping over the part where I go in and I interviewed and they hired me, because I had already mentioned they were desperate. And so the interview process was basically like, are you breathing? And if the answer was yes, you were hired. This was my nameplate for my cubicle. I'm really happy that all throughout my career, I hung on to stuff like this. I had a feeling that one day I would be glad that I did. And, sure enough, here it all is. This was, again, because I got hired, and this is my invitation to go see Orgasmo, the Trey Parker and Matt Stone live-action movie, which is pretty good. If it's not for everybody, but it's pretty funny. I remember I made off with a bunch of these letterhead envelopes. I'm going to have to be careful about this. Here's the studio directory. What else we got in here? Yeah, I'm not going to turn this around because I'm certain that there are people who would, write down phone numbers and addresses and everybody. But yeah, here's everybody's phone numbers and addresses. Wow. Wonder if they still live there. Wow, holy cow. I had forgotten. Motion Picture Personal Service Agreement, South Park Features, job title, animator. This is my actual contract. I wasn't even aware that I signed an actual contract. Let's see what this says. Animator, name, John Fountain. Effective date, 8/31/98. Wow, so that was, I just had a birthday, because my birthday is August 6th. Oh, wow, there's the address of the place I lived at in Hollywood. Studio rate. There's my, yeah, there's what I got paid. And this was another thing. They paid overtime, which wound up being really great because there was lots of overtime. All parties, blah, blah, blah. There's my line producer's name. More about the money. To South Park family from, I'm not going to mention her name, alarm, working late. Hello everyone. Remember that 4-digit number Adam gave you the first week here? That's your alarm code, and everyone needs to know how to use it. If you don't remember your code, please see Adam. If you think that you are the last person to leave, double check. Wow, so we were, we were, there were no guards in the building, because there were people who worked there around the clock. So, if you happen to be the last person there, you were expected to set the studio alarm. These are different times. Also, if you feel the need to come into work late at night, real late, like 3 a.m., please let me know in advance so I can inform the security guard. There is a problem with staying late, just turning up at odd hours. Thank you for your cooperation. That was, the person signing this was one of 2 people that I'm still in contact with at South Park, very loosely. So that, I clearly started right around August, which makes perfect sense, because I remember my drive to the studios every day was really hot. Very shortly thereafter, they had the Halloween party. Trey Parker, Matt Stone, and the South Park staff, in association with Comedy Central, cordially invite you to celebrate the first anniversary of the premiere of South Park. Oh, the first anniversary of the premiere of the South Park TV show. That's how new the show was. And it was already a huge hit. That's kind of amazing. I truly have not looked at a lot of this stuff in well over 20 years. Memo to end all memos from... Hello, this is to reiterate that we no longer have a massage therapist coming every Tuesday from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. Oh, to reiterate that we have a massage therapist coming in every Tuesday. It is $1 per minute if you'd like to sign up. Sign up sheet. Yeah, that's right. They had a massage therapist. Again, the long hours that we worked and the long hours that the people worked who were working on the TV show was at least sort of compounded by the fact that they had massage therapists. I think they had a room if you wanted to take a nap. And like I said, you got paid overtime. So we'll have bagels served every Monday. Staff lunch delivered every Friday at no cost to you. Yeah, they at least really tried to make up for the fact that they knew that people were breaking their backs on this stuff. Now we can argue all day long whether or not their method for making the show is a good idea, but they do what they do over at South Park. And by the way, for the record, consistently, as far as adult animation goes, every time I've ever turned down South Park, I laugh. I always think it's funny. I think they've remained consistently funny where a lot of other adult animation has not. So take that how you will. So anyway, my daughter got me this mug. So anyway, I get hired. I get plopped into a station. I get handed a pile of shots that are going to be mine, but I get told right out of the gate, don't start, because apparently massive rewrites were going on, and they were making huge, major changes to the script. And they're like, just don't start yet. Wait for us to tell you to start. In the meantime, here are all the tutorials on Maya. And oh my gosh, Maya, oh, you demon goddess, you. I understand that for most animators, Maya probably seems very simple, but I am not good at reading manuals, following instruction books. I got to get my hands on it and I got to play with it for a while. And in addition, the only types of computers I had ever done anything on before were Macs. So, of course, these PCs and the Maya and all that stuff just intimidated the heck out of me. And right out of the gate, I was just sweating bullets. This was frankly kind of before anxiety was a thing, and that I recognize that it's something I deal with. It was intense, and I was petrified, and I was like, oh my gosh, I already don't know what I'm doing. I don't know what's expected of me. I don't know anyone here. There's no one here that I feel comfortable asking questions to. And I may have made the biggest mistake of my life. And I'm still only a year in Los Angeles. So I'm just like, what have I done? Um, and now I mentioned there's no one I can ask to help me out. That was the other thing about my experience at South Park that was unique. Practically everybody else who was an animator at that time had either just graduated or was still technically attending CalArts. So they all knew each other, and they were all friends, and they were all like 19, 20 years old. I was 27, going on to, oh no, according to that, I had just turned 28. So according to them, I was the old guy. And as the old guy, nobody had heard of, nobody knew anything about. And so, for lack of a better way of putting it, nobody had any interest at that studio at getting to know me. There were a couple of peripheral people, like production people, and the sound guy was really nice. I happened to have my cubicle was right outside his office, and every time I saw him, he was really nice. One of the editors was also incredibly nice. One of the main editors of the show. I remember he and I having some really good conversations. But of course, he was the editor of a feature film, so he didn't have tons of time. So it's not like he and I would go to lunch or anything like that. The receptionist and the coordinator for the show were always very nice. But again, they were always doing stuff. And by the way, they were always the ones connecting to Trey and Matt whenever Trey and Matt came in. And I would estimate that I had been there probably at least a month before I even got a glimpse of Trey and Matt. Because again, so much of the movie was still just being rewritten that the momentum had not even begun yet. So I'm just going in every day, sitting and staring at my computer, being told, don't start animating yet. And I would earnestly and honestly spend the first 3 hours of an 8-hour day trying really hard to get to know Maya, and thinking to myself, okay, now's my time to make mistakes, because if I can just learn this by doing it, I will be fine by the time we get started. And I really tried doing it. And ordinarily, when I try stuff like that, if I have the opportunity to play around with something long enough, eventually I will get it, and eventually I'll become at least comfortable enough to work in it. It just wasn't happening. Every time I sort of thought to myself, okay, now I've got it, something would happen to show me that everything I thought I knew was 100% wrong. So I would spend 3 or 4 hours a day just trying to learn this stuff, and at a point I would just get so frustrated and so down on myself and so upset, and again so petrified of the idea of asking people for help that I would just get incredibly depressed and sad, and I would sketch in my sketchbook and wonder, was this the biggest mistake of my life? And now I know you're probably thinking, well, what, just go to the person in the cube next to you and ask them for help. Trust me, on the one hand, for me, with all of my weirdness, that is a really hard thing to do. Secondly, I did do that. I did that repeatedly. But after asking the same person 2 or 3 times, can you show me this again? I couldn't keep bugging them because they had their own shots and stuff to worry about. So, I just found myself in this quagmire of anxiety and depression and fear and loneliness. Like I said, all the people that I was working with, doing the same job that I was doing, were younger. I would see them; they would all get together and they would go out to lunch, and they would come back laughing and having a blast. Not once did anyone invite me, so I was really lonely. So I would do things like surf what was then the, sort of, the beginnings of the internet. I would look up, websites about topics that interested me, true crime stuff, and I would go into chat rooms and be like, I'm working on the South Park movie and it's terrible. And then, so every now and then, I would get a few shots where they would say, okay, do these shots now. And boy, through sheer force of will, I would get them done and turn them in, and then inevitably, Eric Stroh, I think his name is, the animation director, would have to come by and say, okay, you did these, but they're wrong. Let me show you how to do it. And by the way, he was nice. Let me show you how to do them right. He would show me how to do them right. 10 seconds later, I would forget what he had just shown me. And so I would do a few shots here and there and turn them in, and every now and then they wouldn't come back to me for revisions, but very often they did. And what, having been a director now a few times myself, it's kind of my opinion that what would happen is I would turn in my shots and the directors would probably be like, oh, it's Fountain again. I'm just going to fix this myself and then move on. So suffice it to say, I think they learned really early on that I wasn't much help. They gave me the tiniest of shots, the most, nothing dramatic, nothing that required any amount of anything. There was I'm trying to think of some specific shots. A lot of crowd shots at the end with the army coming over the hill. There's a lot of stuff with the French Resistance kid that I did. If I had to pick any of my shots from the movie that I could say, okay, there's still a tiny bit of my DNA in those shots, it's the ones with him. Yeah, the shot where he says, careful, was my mother careful when she, etc., etc. Yeah, all those shots surrounding that. A couple things with Terrence and Phillip, but again, they learned really early on that not to give me anything that was of any consequence. And rightfully so. I didn't know what I was doing. I super didn't know what I was doing, and I super mega didn't know what I was doing. And I had used up every ounce of whatever modicum of social skill I had to try and get myself to a place where I could be effective. And I don't want to say I gave up, because I don't believe I really gave up, but I definitely sort of felt to myself, you're doing more harm than good by just being here. In addition to that, at one point we were all invited up to Eric's office to watch a rough animatic on videotape of the movie, and we watch it from beginning to end. And now I had seen enough rough cuts of things before to sort of know what I was looking at. But I'm watching this rough cut of the movie, and there's no sound effect, and the music is temporary. Um, and I was like, wow, this is really boring. And the story was completely different, practically, from the story that made it onto the screen. So I was like, oh man, this is a drag, and I started to feel bad. I'm like, oh, this movie is not gonna do well. Um, so I had all these different factors, going on. I'm like, I felt like the movie was in trouble, and in addition, I'm very very little help. Um, uh, it was just it was a cluster of madness, and then they kept saying to us, sit tight, sit tight, sit tight, and they warned us. They're like, what's going to happen is you're going to be sitting around for a couple months, and then all at once the whole movie is going to be thrown in your lap. And they're like, and look, we will cover for it. You're going to get paid overtime, double overtime, whatever we need, but we still need you to come into the office, and we need you to be ready to pick away at whatever shots we can give you when we can. And so that's what we were doing. And like I said, every now and then I'd get lucky, and I think one of my shots would work out. But around this same time, I had gotten wind that Oh Yeah Cartoons over at Nickelodeon had a guy called Fred Cyber who was openly taking pitches for Oh Yeah Cartoons. Um, and so I had a few ideas. So I one day took a long lunch, drove from Marina Del Rey, which is on the opposite side of town from Burbank, which is where Nickelodeon, and drove to Burbank. Pitched a couple of my ideas to Fred, and again, this is a whole other story, so I'm going to breeze over this, and I'll tell this story another time. Pitched a bunch of cartoon ideas to Fred, showed him my drawings, showed him my whole portfolio, and famously, he was like, "Well, I don't like your cartoon ideas, but I really like the way you draw. You seem like a funny guy. We've got another show over here called Chalk Zone. That's they need an extra set of hands for storyboards. I see you've got some storyboarding experience. Go talk to my pal Larry Huber about potentially doing storyboards for Chalk Zone." I was like, oh my gosh, finally, the break I've been looking for, the break that could get me into Nickelodeon. Now, again, they were looking for freelancers. They were not looking to hire full time. But I went over, I talked to Larry Huber. He and I got along marvelously right out of the gate. He also liked my drawings. He understood what, that storyboarding skill is storyboarding skill. And Chalk Zone was a very cartoony cartoon, and they were interested in gags, and they liked my sense of humor. So right out of the gate, they were like, oh, we want to work with John Fountain. We want you to do storyboards for our Oh Yeah Cartoon Chalk Zone. So I was immediately given a bunch of assignments, and I'm like, this is great, except I still have my full-time job at South Park. So for what I want to say is about 6 months, I lived in Hollywood. I literally lived in a one room, not one bedroom, one room um, hovel of an apartment right off of actual Hollywood Boulevard. Like I was one block up from Grauman's Chinese Theater, which sounds glamorous, but it's not. It wasn't. I mean, it wasn't a rat hole or anything like that, but it was a tiny little apartment because it's all I could afford at the time. So, um, so okay, so here is Hollywood. Okay, Hollywood is here. Uh, Marina Del Rey, where South Park was over here, and Burbank was over here. So for I want to say 3 to 6 months, I would get up in the morning at in Hollywood. It would take me roughly 45 minutes to drive to Marina Del Rey to South Park. I would get in as much work as I could, then drive all the way across town to Burbank, where Nickelodeon was, present them the work that I had done the night before, get notes for revisions, hobnob with as many people there as I could, then drive all the way back to Marina Del Rey, and now I've taken like a 3-hour lunch, so I have to stay 3 hours later afterwards because I've taken such a long lunch. sit around, do as many shots as I could, and then drive another 45 minutes, usually right around 8 or 9 o'clock at night. Drive another 45 minutes back to my apartment in Hollywood, where I would then have to, on a card table and a light box, do my storyboards for Chalk Zone, which I would do till like 1 or 2 in the morning, collapse on my bed, and then in the morning start the whole process over again. I did that for somewhere between 3 and 6 months, and I was so sleep deprived that I wound up getting in a car accident one morning on my way to Marina Del Rey to work on South Park. Meanwhile, while all this was going on, and the thing is, I couldn't, like, I was turning in storyboards for Chalk Zone, and as I was turning in storyboards for Chalk Zone, other Oh Yeah Cartoons directors were seeing my stuff, and they're like, oh wow, this is nice. We need storyboard artists for our cartoons as well. And so I was getting all this freelance from Nickelodeon, but no like solid commitments. But I came to learn that being a storyboard artist was like, you were a commodity. So every time somebody at Nickelodeon said, can you do my storyboard? I said yes, because every storyboard that I did that was for something in Nickelodeon, that's another feather in my cap, and that's another step away towards the direction that I ultimately wanted to go in. But the schedule I was keeping was absolutely grueling. Because yeah, I would go into South Park every morning, absolutely ragged, again, lonesome, not really understanding what my job was, not really understanding what I was doing, and just generally miserable. And the only fun I was having was doing the storyboards for Nickelodeon, but I was doing those after working a full day at South Park. And then they actually got the script finished, and all the changes were made, and suddenly we were getting heaps of stuff all at once, and I was having to jam through them. And again, constantly having to ask for help, constantly having to bother people. And still, again, I feel like my coworkers increasingly disliked me. And this just kept going on and on and on. Finally, eventually, Chalk Zone got its series pickup, or what at the time they were called 6-packs. And what that meant was Chalk Zone, Fairly Odd Parents, and Invader Zim got picked up for 6 episodes each. And that was considered a season pickup. With the idea being, we're going to air these 6 episodes, and if they do well, they're going to continue. So, of course, that's all, and all of them did. So in lieu of that, or actually, they had finished the 6-pack, and beyond that, Chalk Zone had gotten a full series pickup. And so with that, Chalk Zone said to me, "Hey, we're done with the 6-pack. We know we're getting our pickup. We know we're getting a full season. Do you want to come work full time as a storyboard artist for Chalk Zone?" And oh my goodness, was I delighted. Not only for the fact that I was finally going to get in at Nickelodeon, for the fact that I was finally going to work on a cartoony cartoon. I was going to work among like minds, because by this point, I'd already done some work for Butch Hartman. I'd met people like Rob Renzetti and Alex Kerwin, and Larry Huber was great. Several other people who would go on to be long-standing friends of mine. Just got along with people better. So this is what I had been waiting for this whole time, literally, practically, since I moved to Los Angeles. So, obviously, I said yes, and I felt, and so now I had the uncomfortable position of having to go back to South Park and give them my 2 weeks notice. Now, I'm sure they weren't thinking to themselves, "Oh my gosh, we're losing one of our greatest assets here," but I'm sure they did think to themselves, "We're losing one of our warm bodies, and we're going to have to find another warm body to fill them." But I'm 100% certain whoever they replaced me with was probably better than I was. I don't think they could have been any worse. So the hardest part of all that was, as I said, Eric Stroh, the animation director, was a super nice guy. handful of production people that were nice to me. It was tough to tell them. And of course, it was Ramsey Nato, who was a person who kind of rolled the dice and asked me to work on it in the first place. I had to go tell her, hey, I'm being presented with this opportunity, and it would be foolish of me to turn it down because this is the direction I want my whole career to go in. And I don't recall them trying to convince me to stay, which in my mind tells me I wasn't really dealing them any kind of serious blows by leaving. And look, they, before I left, they gave me what. And it was also around this time that the first trailer for Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace, had come out on the internet. And watching a trailer premiere on the internet was a big deal. Just as a piece of extra trivia. Let's see, where'd that go? Despite my leaving, when the time came, I got an invitation to the premiere party. Everyone got one of these. Now, this is the South Park movie equivalent of the crew photograph. What's interesting, however, is that I am not in there. And by the way, who can blame them? Yeah, so I got, and then, I don't know, probably another year later, the South Park movie actually came out, and a bunch of friends of mine and I went to go see it in a theater with a crowd, and it was really exciting, and it was, I wish I could have sat in a theater and thought to myself, oh, wow, there's a piece of me in this movie. There's really not. There's, and again, that's really kind of the point of the title of this movie, and it kind of piggybacks onto the point of the previous video, where I said I helped save Rick and Morty. Again, that was a bold statement for me to make, and frankly, I stand by it. And the reason you can kind of count on an objective report from me is I am telling you in no uncertain terms, not for lack of desire and not for lack of motivation, I was terrible at South Park. I was bad at that job. I tried. I don't think it was one of those occasions where I just don't think I was a good fit. Ultimately, though, I have to look back on it and go, well, it was still a good decision, because if I hadn't gotten the stink of Klasky Csupo off me, I don't think they would have ever taken my pitches at Nickelodeon. I wouldn't have met Fred, and I wouldn't have gone on to work on The Fairly Odd Parents and Invader Zim. That's how I got in at Nickelodeon. So that was kind of my second major break in the industry. So again, when you hear me talk about stuff that I've done that I'm proud of, keep in mind that I have an equal number of stories on stuff that I've worked on that I'm not proud of. Not because there's anything wrong with the work, but because I wasn't right for the role, or I wasn't good at it, or whatever. That being said, it was fun to go see it in a movie theater with a bunch of my friends and hear the crowd laugh, and it got a huge reaction. And by sheer alphabetical luck, when the credits were rolling and animators come up, my name is on the top tier of animators, which I guess I should feel bad about, because, like I said, I did so very little to contribute to the overall anything of the film. But on the other hand, the trade-off was, like I said, I had no friends at that studio. Nobody really went out of their way to sort of sympathize with my situation or make me feel welcome at all. So, sorry, other animators on the South Park movie. If you're upset that my name got above yours, I am honestly sorry, but not totally. So I guess if there's a lesson to be learned from all this, and I would like to think that every experience in life has a lesson buried in it somewhere, it's that my experience at South Park was not good. I did not have fun at all. I didn't walk away with a mastery of Maya. I didn't make any friends. Um, it was not a fun experience. And again, that's through no fault of South Park, Trey and Matt, anyone else. And by the way, oh, I should have mentioned this ages ago. While I was working there, I think I saw Trey and Matt twice. And here was my impression of Trey and Matt. There was one time the office that was adjacent to mine happened to be unused, and one time um, Matt Stone used that office to get on the phone and make plans for a trip that he and Trey were making to Las Vegas. And it sounds like they were going to have a really good time there. Now I could have been getting that completely wrong, but from what and look, he didn't shut the door. He didn't make any effort to, sort of keep his voice down. So I'm assuming I'm not saying anything, that I'm not telling tales out of school. But he was planning what sounded like a very fun Vegas trip. And those my two vaguest impressions of Trey Parker and Matt Stone are this, and these are just impressions. This has nothing to do with reality. And again, I don't think I ever said anything to them, or they ever said anything to me. I think there was an occasion where we were all in a room together, and they were like, "Okay, gang, yay, good job, blah blah blah." But nothing. I had no direct interaction with the two of them. Matt Stone seemed like, from what I could see from a distance, seemed like a very fun guy, very just sort of fancy free. Whereas Trey Parker, every time I saw him, he looked ferociously stressed out, sweating, looked like he hadn't slept a lot. And from what I gather from other reports from people who have worked with him, I feel like that kind of checks out. And that's my impression was that that's how their dynamic works. And by the way, I think that's fantastic. I think it's fantastic that they have each other to fill those roles. They're their own yin and yang, and it seems to really, really work for them. And my feeling is, yay for them. Like I said, Trey Parker seems to be the one who just burns and sweats and burns and sweats, and tries to get stuff done. And Matt Stone is the one who balances him out, and that's frankly that's another lesson to be learned from all this, and something I have absolutely learned is if you're a creative type at all, you need to have at least one person in your life who's willing to look you in the eye and say, "That's a terrible idea. You should do it this way instead." Someone that you trust, and I think that's what they have, and I think that's great. So anyway, I got to go to the premiere party, and there were a couple celebrities there that I got to see, and that was fun and all that stuff. But again, I hardly knew anybody, so I didn't get to go with anybody. I didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and yeah, no, even my group of friends was pretty small. So I would go to these parties by myself, and it was kind of neat and all, but I got to go to the premiere party. Like I said, I got to see it in theaters, and that was a lot of fun. But like I said, I think the real lesson to be learned from my experience at South Park is this, and this is something that I have gone to art and animation schools and professed with a tremendous amount of gravitas, because I believe that this is potentially universal. As I said, I did not have a good time at South Park. It was not rewarding to me. It was not enjoyable. It was in many ways very, very just kind of soul crushing. However, it was the thing that led to the thing that wound up being the greatest thing in my career ever. And I think that life is full of situations like that, where you have to endure one thing to get to the next thing. Or sometimes you have to endure one thing to get to the next thing that you have to endure, to get to the next thing that you have to endure. And that's what life will do. Life will test you and say, how many things are you willing to endure to get to the place that you profess to want to be? And that was a test for me, and I was happy to have passed. Like I said, I tried hard to, every job I've ever had, I've tried to make myself indispensable. It didn't happen at South Park, but not for lack of trying. Um, and like I said, I had many days and nights working there where I was like, oh, what am I doing? This is so miserable. What have I done? And there's no way I could have foreseen where this one decision was going to lead and how it was going to positively affect the rest of my career. So, again, to those who find themselves currently in a situation where you feel like you're it's grueling and you have trouble even just enduring it every day, I can't tell you when or if it's ever going to be over. I can't tell you what that's going to look like. I can't tell you that all your dreams are going to come true. I can't tell you that you're going to get the call from Nickelodeon saying, hey, do you want to come work on Chalk Zone? I can't tell you that any of that stuff is going to happen. I can only tell you what happened to me. And what happened to me would not have happened if I had given up. And if I had said to myself, I don't like this, and therefore I'm going to quit. You know, as distressed as I was, and as hopeless as I felt, I did keep going, and I kept saying, my job right now is to endure this. Um, so again, if anyone can take anything positive away from that, if you can apply that to your situation, either now or in the future, then I hope this video has helped you in some capacity. And if you are simply a fan of South Park, simply a fan of animation, I hope you have enjoyed it on that capacity. Um, but once again, I want to thank you for tuning in at all. Thank you for watching this whole thing. If you have managed to get through it all, I need to take a moment now to, of course, impart upon you that the reason this video exists and the reason I did it at all is because we are on this channel working really hard. There are 200 of us working really hard to make new, original, free cartoons to put on this channel. So please, um, click on the subscribe button below. It costs you absolutely nothing, and we're going to be bringing you free cartoons. It costs you nothing, but it means the world to us. Specifically, it means the world to the 200 independent, undiscovered animation rock stars that I've got working with me to create new cartoons. And it gets us ever closer to a goal where we can, where we can run on our own steam. And so please hit subscribe. Watch the trailers. Watch the other videos if you want to. There are other videos in the list down there where I go into greater detail as to what we're doing at Fountain's Pen Cartoons. Look me up on Twitter X at Fountain Cartoon. One of the reasons that we're doing this whole thing in such a sort of, mom and pop grassroots kind of way is so that we can interact directly with our audience and with our, small but growing group of fans. We want to create a community where you feel like if we do something you like, you can reach out to us directly and say, hey, here's what I did like, here's what I didn't like. We want to remove some of the mystique around all this, and we want to, I don't know, we want to help usher in this indie animation thing and be a unique part of it. So, like I said, please take this moment, hit subscribe, watch the other cartoons, like, share, and subscribe, and more importantly, in my opinion anyway, tell your friends, talk to people around you and say, hey, I saw this really cool teaser trailer for a new cartoon, blah, 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 so-and-so might like it, whatever. And by the way, I'm very accessible. Reach out to me on any and all social media. Just look under Fountain Cartoons and you'll find me. So once again, thank you very much for watching. Thank you for the support that you've shown the channel so far. I do intend on making more videos like this where I tell stories. I think the next one I'm going to do, well, I'm not going to reveal what the next one's going to be about. But I'll do more videos like this. But you know, let me know in the comment section below. What did you like? What didn't you like? I take criticism really well, everybody. I don't have feelings to hurt. So you know, leave a comment. Shoot me a DM. Let me know what you thought of this and what you would like to see more of, and you know, I'll try to accommodate. But thanks again for watching, everybody. I'll see you next time. Again, don't forget to hit subscribe, and until next time, zig zig ah, party people.